Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another fantastic episode of Behind Them Sticks with your boy Ham Solo 05 Gaming here on the TSWS Gaming YouTube channel. I feel bad because sometimes I don't think I ever really tell anybody what the hell TSWS even freaking means. But when they come to that channel, they're just like, oh yeah, it's Ham's channel. TSW. What the hell does it mean? It means they said, we said. So I kind of made that kind of up, I guess, one day, just kind of bored thinking of different podcast names and stuff like that. And I'm like, what's a good way to kind of describe, like, I listen to a lot of shit and then kind of throw it back out. And I guess like they said and then we said is like the best thing I could kind of come up with. So welcome to the show, those of you that are watching this live right now. And a special thanks to those of you that are coming through watching this when we are not live. But I have a fantastic guest here today that has a fantastic podcast of his own. Really funny. I was very surprised when I ran across it. I like these. I like the listening to these dudes. They're pretty dang funny. Their last episode was phenomenal. I even like the play that they kind of do with only being a radio type podcast and not being on face and everything like that. They even give you like stuff to listen to, and then write in and say what you want to say and vote on certain stuff. So they really take advantage of them phone lines and stuff like that, and get going on it. But one of the main brothers of the Gamers Week podcast, let me introduce to you Mr. Retro Game Brews. What's cracking, brother? How are you doing? Good to see you.
Yeah, I'm doing awesome, Ham. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm real excited.
Absolutely, man. I'm definitely excited to have you here too. It's going to be interesting because one thing that I'm really excited about our episode in particular is that I never have anybody that's just into retro stuff. I always have somebody that started out maybe on something that's considered retro now.
Right.
I've even had some people on that started out like more. I mean, some people consider like 360 and stuff like that retro at this point, but that's arguable for a lot of different people. I'm not going to argue with you about it. So, I just find it very interesting today that I'm going to be talking to somebody that's able to kind of have a balance with these things and kind of point out what they really liked about, gaming of the past compared to today's types of game. Cause we're all a fool for nostalgia. Let's be real. Sure. We're all a fool for nostalgia. If we see something that reminds us of something, it makes us more likely to just want to engage in it, want to get to that meat and potatoes, especially if it's like a video game or some music or something like that. Media is just like it's fantastic because it can come in so many different ways, but it can also just remind you of simpler times, I guess you could say. So going ahead, brother, please do me the favor and just let everybody know where they can find you, what kind of stuff that you like to get into. Tell them more about your podcasts and stuff like that. Let me go on ahead and give you the floor to be able to do that now. And I'll also have you do that towards the end of the episode too, just so we can hit it from both sides. Pause. But anyways, continue, brother. Go on ahead. Speak your truth.
So my name is Ryan, aka Retro Game Brews. I've been on social media talking about retro games for since probably 2014 is when I first started out. It was a passion of mine. I had obviously grown up in the 80s and 90s, and I absolutely loved gaming as a kid. It was actually something that towards the early 2000s I kind of fell out from, but decided to kind of get back into it when my friend was collecting retro games, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the community and all the people involved with it. And really, Twitter has been the space that you could find me for the most part when it comes to the gaming community. And of course, at Retro Game Brews is where you can interact with me on Twitter. But you know, as a result of building those friendships and being involved with that community, I ended up joining both my two co-hosts, Writer's View, aka Blue Williams, and Donnie G Retro, to start the Gamers Week podcast about a year and a half ago. And the focus of the podcast was really just talking about, what's happening in the video game news space, but also is there other things that we can bring into the mix that talk about gaming culture. So one of the things that I do on each episode is this thing called Professor Rybred's Gaming History 101, in which I take a look at one specific topic and we cover it for about 10 minutes or so, where we just talk about all the things that happened. So, for example, motion controls or the lawsuits that happened in the 90s when it came to the ESRB, and just really taking some time to focus on what happened back then that shaped today's gaming for what it is. And
That's
we do it
fantastic.
weekly. Yeah, we do it weekly. You can find us on Twitter at Gamers Week PC, and we're on every podcast platform. So whatever you got as far as your favorite is concerned, if you just look up Gamers Week podcast, you'll find us. And every single week. We're just about to record episode 75, and
75.
yeah,
So
and
y'all
it
been
doesn't.
working.
Oh yeah, and to be honest with you, though, it doesn't feel like work, which is great. The three of us are pretty close as far as friends are concerned, and we get along pretty well. So
Yeah, you can tell that the chemistry's there. You guys have your segments very tight. We were just talking about before the show started about some of the songs that sometimes come into those
Sure.
segments. Maybe speak on that a little bit for maybe a first time listener coming in.
Yeah. So one of the things that we've done is each week we do a poll. We ask people to kind of sound off about it on Twitter. We just say, hey, you know what? Here are a few choices for this particular topic. Like, for example, this week is who are your favorite twins in video games, right? Just something random. And the idea is that we get a chance to share our opinions. But the introduction segment to that, it just started off with us just saying, hey, you know what? Now it's time for the very important poll. But eventually we started to try to mix things up with that a little bit. So I went into, creating voice changers and trying to be funny about it, maybe even doing a little bit of a skit. And then eventually I got the idea to take it one step further by creating a metal song, which I grabbed some copyright-free metal music. I changed my voice and did a recording, made a 30-second metal song. And now we are one-upping each other, which has been absolutely hilarious. Donnie's done one where he takes the lyrics and the music from Careless Whisper from George Michael and changed it around about the poll. Blue's done one where she's taken some of the dialogue between Jodie Foster's character and Hannibal Lecter from Silence of the Lambs. And most recently, yeah. And most recently, I did Hello Mother, Hello Father from Alan Sherman. So it's getting to the point where things are getting a little crazy, but that's the fun. You know what? It's every single week. We don't actually hear it until we record. So every time we play a new one, the reactions that you're hearing are genuine. And that's, I think, the fun part about it is that we're all kind of trying to be creative for each other, trying to make each other laugh, which is, I think, comes across pretty well in the podcast.
No doubt. And one thing I wanted to point out, because we will be talking about, your podcast and your team and whatnot here shortly. But one other thing I wanted to kind of point out is, like, I know that your podcast is pretty interesting when I'm listening to it, right? And, I'm just listening more or less to gain information for this interview and like trying to figure out who you are within like that podcast and stuff like that. And I go to turn around, my wife was sitting right there and she's just cheesing looking up and there's nothing playing but your guys' show. And like I said, I was listening to it off of Spotify.
Yeah.
So she was watching just me get ready for, stuff for a future podcast and stuff like that. And she was listening, and it was during the part of just this most recent episode where you guys were playing different metal music from different video games and trying to like judge which one was the best in your guys' opinion.
Yep.
and she was just like she looked like a little kid looking at a damn carousel. Like I'm dead serious, because she was just like, oh, I know that song, I remember that, and I was just like, bullshit. but like, but like for real, she's a gamer as well. Our whole
Right.
our whole team is my family. My whole team is a gamer, right?
Mhm.
My wife loves, the old nostalgic games and Halo, and that's kind of where the buck stops. She likes a lot of classic games and Halo Infinite. She plays
There
that
it is.
like all the time. She'll dabble with some other games. The last game I think that was random that she beat was um Immortals Phoenix Rising.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
how random is it though? Because she loves Zelda. So I was just like, you didn't reach that far into the cookie jar, okay? Like you didn't like try a new experience. What you did was try a copy and pasted experience somewhere else with a different publisher, different developer. It's the same bullshit though.
She was being safe, right?
Right. She was. She was like, I don't want to get disappointed in this motherfucker over here watching me playing all these games. I'm gonna have fun. Whatever. Fine. That's fine. I'm just happy she enjoyed a new experience, I guess. But yeah, you guys' show is pretty dope. But let's get into
Thank you.
some of these topics that I wanted to talk about, because I love talking about how people got into gaming and what kind of made them be where they are today. Especially, I mean, if you're on Twitter talking about games and I see games in your profile and stuff like that, I'm like, you're a little more than just a regular gamer. All right, so but then I see all of your stuff. You got the podcast, you got this going on, you got that. I mean, look at you. You're making songs that has to do with gaming, getting under people's skin and stuff like that. I tell you, man. I tell you, I had to holler at you. So I want to know, or actually, I already asked what your first console that you ever played on was. I asked him this before the show, as a lot of you know that watch the show. I asked him before the show what was the first console that he ever had, and he said that it was an NES, but he had got his start into video games over at the G-Pa's house under the under the Atari 2600. Am I right?
Yep. So when I
Go
was
on ahead.
real young, yeah, like 4 years old or so, I remember going over to my grandparents' house and they had like an Atari 2600. Had a few games with it. One that stuck out to me was a game called Keystone Capers, and I loved that. And the beauty of Atari too. I mean, I'm 4 years old. It's got a joystick and one button. That's all you need to know, right? It's not sophisticated. There's no ABXY. There's no shoulder buttons or triggers or thumbsticks. It's a joystick, one button, and I absolutely loved that game. And really, it was both me playing, but also me watching my brother and my cousins play as well. So if you want to call that like early Twitch or YouTube, it was
It's the
fun,
closest thing you had to it. I
Right?
mean, unless
Exactly,
somebody wanted to grab a camcorder and put it on display at your high school or something, that's the closest you're gonna get.
exactly. And then when I turned 5, it was that Christmas we got an NES and fell in love with that thing instantly. I mean, Duck Hunt, Super Mario Bros, game Kung Fu, Mike Tyson's Punch Out, the whole gamut. Later, my mom ended up buying me a Power Glove as well as a kid. So I was
Man,
big in.
yeah, you had it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Even
you
though,
probably felt like Thanos with that thing. You
oh
were
yeah,
just like, I got the power.
and it looked a lot cooler than it worked. I'll say that. But uh, yeah, it's
It's a
the
lot of that
NES.
stuff back then. A lot of it
Oh yeah.
was kind of gimmicky. I mean, like, and even if it was a dope piece of hardware, like the batteries can't keep up with it. Like, oh my god, like one of my favorite pieces of hardware, the freaking Nomad.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
thing drove you mad for how many times you need to change batteries in that thing. It was
Yep.
the dopest piece of hardware out. Like it was the Switch before the Switch, but for goodness sakes, man, like most people that had that, like, what were rechargeable batteries then?
Right. Nobody.
Yeah, nobody had those things. No, but those were the rich people batteries. Nobody had those. But go ahead.
No, and you know what? You bring up a really good point here because there were so many different accessories and stuff that you got with the NES, so like the power pad and all that stuff. And what was interesting is that I don't think I knew any one kid who had it all, but like everyone in the neighborhood had something unique, right? And so you would spend a lot of time going over a friend's house, playing different games, checking out different
Tiger,
accessories.
Tecmo,
Exactly.
Konamis, and
Yeah.
all those little, even the little Tamagotchi. Like everyone was dabbling with some sort of bit type game.
Exactly. And I actually just did one on Tiger Electronics, and it's funny to kind of see where they started off from. They were a company that just decided they were going to make phonographs in like the 70s, and then 1984 comes around. They're like, you know what? We need to get into this video game thing, and it kind of went from there. And I can't tell you that I didn't have like 20 or 30 of those growing up. It was a thing you would get at Christmas, Thanksgiving, just any gift. If you got,
he had a couple shoe boxes full of.
Exactly. And you collected them, you played them for a little bit, and then you put them away because that was the amount of fun that was available to them. But
the battery starts to get low when you got to tilt it down a little
exactly
bit, to see it. like I know exactly. Like, the animation ain't happening. you gotta turn that screen.
Pressing as hard as you can on the button to get it to do something. Yeah, I remember those days. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. So I want to know, like, and I've kind of come to this kind of come to a custom of me of asking this question almost every episode. It seems like I want to know, like, was it during the NES time when you were at that young age, or was it a different type of event that came up and happened where you're like, I don't care, I'm telling my friends, don't care, I'm a gamer.
Yep.
I'm that guy. I play games, not ashamed, don't care. Like when did that moment happen for you?
So we got our Super Nintendo, I think in 1992 or 93. And one of the games that we got, not originally, but eventually as we played it more often, was Turtles in Time. And huge fan of the Ninja Turtles, watched the shows, had all the toys. Oh yeah, and loved the arcade game, used to go and play it all the time at like Pizza Hut. That was always there. And when they came out one for the NES,
when Pizza Hut was fun.
Right. And they came out with one for the NES, and it was okay. It wasn't terrible, but it worked. But when they came out with the Super Nintendo and Turtles in Time, it was a whole new ball game. It felt just like the arcade, and me and my brother would play that game almost every night. Probably did so every single night for at least 2 months. Just keep playing it, keep beating it, keep playing it, keep beating it. And the music was fantastic. It was a challenge. Eventually we would start fighting each other. And you know what? Honestly, the funny part is when I got back into retro gaming, one of the first games I got for the Super Nintendo was Turtles in Time, and my brother bought it for me as a gift. And what did we do? We went right downstairs. We played it like, nothing had left off. Like we had just, traveled back in time to when the two of us were first plugging this game in, and we beat it right off the bat. And it felt great. But that was that moment where I realized that, no matter what, I was a gamer. Right. And the thing is too, like back in the day, being a gamer wasn't socially acceptable. Right.
No.
A lot of kids were doing it. Don't get me wrong. It was something where, you played with your friends, but to associate yourself at that level as somebody who's a gamer, you were still considered to be, it was a nerdy thing, right? It wasn't something that everybody did, and it didn't have mass appeal yet. Nowadays, it's a lot more acceptable. Most people game in some capacity, whether it's on a console, on a PC, or on their phone in some way or another. But back then, it was
you were
it was still kind of
degenerate if you played games like especially before my time particular, because I grew up like Super Nintendo, like I grew up more or less like Nintendo was just kind of fading out. Super
Mhm.
Nintendo and Sega was like the thing. And
Right.
like that was the first thing in my household. And I just remember like beforehand, like my brother telling me about gaming and stuff because he's 13 years older than me.
Oh, nice.
So
Okay.
so he was telling me, about gaming before I was around. He was like, "Yo, like this is different now." Like even compared to his time to my time, he's like, "Yo, this
Right.
is different now." He was telling me how much more acceptable it was
Oh, yeah.
because even back in like the early Atari days, it was like,
And it
like
was kid stuff. This was something for kids.
right,
If you were 10 or younger, way more acceptable. But if you were above that age, it was considered to be kind of outside of your age range. So if you were still, say you were 13 or 14 and you were playing the Atari, people look at you strange. So you're
yeah,
not wrong.
yeah,
And yeah,
you're a freak or
and
geek,
right, exactly. And so uh, with the Atari, it was also something that kind of started that whole console war thing as well. We often think about the console wars being, Super Nintendo, NES versus Genesis, but really back then it was Atari, ColecoVision, and Intellivision. And which one did you have and which one did you play? So it was even to the point where it was got even further into the nerdiness level where you were arguing with friends over which one you had and all that good stuff. Uh, and you know what? That still persists today, right?
No, absolutely, absolutely. Which I mean, a lot of these people say these consoles are big today. Like, bro, like Coleco was like a whole computer, bro.
Right.
like it came with a screen. Like like in whatchamacallit, like the Commodore, that thing was
Commodore
that that,
64, yeah.
that was a Chungus. Like
Mhm.
there is some big old. I'm a little surprised the PS5 is as big as it is, especially since
Oh,
it's
that
Japanese. I'm just like, what happened over there with that? And the Xbox is pretty big too. I ain't gonna lie, it's kind of big. It's different than what we had thought may be future consoles when we were
right.
young. We thought maybe it's just gonna be this little box or something like this, but
Mhm.
I thought it was trending more GameCube
Right.
direction because I was just like, oh, small disc. This is interesting. Piracy and all this other stuff. Like they trying to dodge what the Dreamcast was doing.
Exactly.
So 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 like I thought that was the direction, but I mean I guess it is kind of going that direction. So we just got the Chunguses still. We got so
Right.
many digital games. They just still big. But anyways, moving forward a little bit. So Super Nintendo, big fan of the of Turtles in Time. That game was fantastic. I mean, especially on the Super Nintendo, those graphics were popping. Those colors
Oh,
were
yeah.
phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
The Super Nintendo brought its game when it came to colors and stuff like that for sure.
For sure.
Fantastic console. But I want to know now, and I always kind of poke at this one a little bit just because I grew up this way, and it always
Sure.
kind of validates my feelings, I guess. But where were you at when it came to Sega during this time period?
So I knew people who had a Sega. I went over and played Genesis a few times at friend's house, and my cousin had a Genesis. But I got a Game Gear when I was a kid, and that introduced
Oh,
me to all the Sega titles I was missing out on. Now, granted, not all of them, but a lot of the games that they ported over were excellent examples of what you could get on a Sega Genesis. And yeah, it was portable, it was handheld. To your point about the Nomad, it ate batteries in about 3 hours, so you had to be pretty good. Ended up getting the like cigarette lighter adapter for the car because we would go on road trips.
smart.
But yeah, but Sega to me, it was. But the thing is, though, what was interesting about that is that I had all my friends were Nintendo guys, right? So I never told them I had a Game Gear because I was afraid of the
Oh,
console war
Lord.
stuff. Yeah, so I was like a closet Game Gear player, right? Come over the house and
Closet
like hide
Sega
it.
thing.
Like, put it away so nobody could see it. Right.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It was deep though. Then it was deep. Like, shoot, it was deep for a while. I mean, it still kind of is deep today. Sometimes you tell somebody what console you rocking with, and they're just like, "Oh, that's trash, man."
Oh yeah.
I don't know why you playing that over there.
Mhm.
I remember getting that, especially as like. Of course, we had our arguments and our fits for Sega back in the day, but it started getting spicy when I got older. And it was like, what you got that Xbox for, man? You just had a PlayStation. What are you doing? And I'm just like, I like music. It lets me rip my music on it. And yeah, you arguing about
Especially when you
stupid
started.
shit.
Well, especially when you started playing online and you could only play with other Xbox players, other PlayStation players. So if you got the different console, your friends felt like you betrayed them, right? You're like, oh man, we
Facts.
can't play anymore. How are you gonna do that to me? You know,
Right. Yep. Just
sorry.
yeah. Like you killed their animal or something. Like it's just
Right,
like,
right.
relax. But then again, I can't lie. I was probably out there doing the same thing a couple times. Like,
Probably, yeah.
Why you get this? I'm not salty like them. This is different. No, it was the same bullshit. but but anyways, so Sega, you got down that handheld wise, which is interesting. That's an interesting way to do it. A lot of people, remember, they had Genesises and stuff like that. So to hear that you had just the handheld is pretty interesting. What were some of the games from that handheld? Do you remember?
Axe Battler was a huge one. Choplifter was another big one. Rise Star, Restar, depending on who you ask. There was what was he? It was man, I'm blanking here. It was a tactical RPG. One of my favorite games on regular Genesis now. I'm losing it. Let me see if I got it here. I have to check. Let's see. You know what? I'm blanking. Okay, so we'll skip that one.
No worries. It looks like you're rocking some. Do you still have Game Gear and games?
Game Gear I haven't had in a while, but interestingly enough, I want to kind of get back into it. It's harder to find, strangely enough. Especially if you're looking to get something that has a box with it, that's super hard to find because nobody ever kept the boxes. But I want to get back into Game Gear, and the beauty of it is nowadays they've got adapters and stuff for that too. So
Got the
I can
Vectrex
play
behind you.
Yeah. Yep. I got a Vectrex.
Oh man,
well.
that thing is expensive.
Well, I just recently moved to like south of Georgia, probably about 2.5 years ago, and I went into a retro shop and they had one, and I knew the price of it, and it was maybe $200 less than what I knew it goes for on eBay, and I was like, hey, I would like to take that home. So yeah, I got a heck of a deal on it, and the funny part is I went into that shop a couple of weeks ago, and they had another one for the right price this time. So I feel like that was not a vindicated, but at least a good purchase for me long term. But yeah,
man, I ain't mad at you, bro. I mean, that's classic right there. That's a little piece of gold. That's a little nugget right there that you got right there.
And you know what's funny is my nieces and nephews love playing that thing. They get such a kick out of it because of the like vector graphics and stuff. And for them, they don't understand the technology behind it and what this means and like all the history. They just like the games, which is funny. It's almost like they're universal. If a game's good, it's good. Doesn't matter how old it is. And the fact that I tell them, like, not a lot of people have played this thing. You're kind of in this exclusive club.
Yeah, especially around this time, right?
Yep.
I mean, games and bro, it's expensive. It's not a cheap piece of hardware. I mean, it never really was.
Right.
But it is. I mean, I'm sure in like a couple generations past, it was still pretty fair to get. But now that it's like, I mean, this thing is like a freaking what are they like a landmark, right? It's like it's like a landmark property where it's just like that stone is worth a lot of money. And it's just like, it's just stone, and it's like, no, it's worth a lot of money though. But that's fantastic. So going down the line, because we're getting off track and whatnot, going down the line of some of the games, like, what were some of the weird pickups through being a kid that you got? So like I said, the Sega handheld that you had, the Game Gear, that's different.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any other kind of different purchases that you made when you were younger? Like, I mean, I had some pretty weird stuff. Like I said, the Nomad. I remember getting those weird ass accessories for my Game Boy Advance. You know, like you get the magnified screen
boy,
with the little light that swizzles up, and like you have to like dodge the glare on it all the time and crap like that. Did you have any of those kind of weird things growing up?
You know what's interesting is like probably the Power Glove is probably the weirdest, which, that was popular because people knew what it was, but I didn't know a lot of people who actually had one. And when I wanted it, I asked my mom for it. And I remember it came in, for Christmas, and my mom said to her, she goes, "You didn't get a lot of presents this time around because that thing cost way too much."
Fair enough.
But I was excited about it. It was super fun. Of course, you set it up on your CRT, put the glove on. First game I played was Mike Tyson's Punch Out with it. Knocked out Glass Joe pretty quick, and that was about it. But that was something that I, as a kid, had a lot of fun with, even if it wasn't strictly just for gaming. I mean, I would wear that thing around the house. I'd put it, the little cord in my back pocket and walk around feeling all cool and stuff. And then as an adult, I really wanted to get another one. And that took me a while because, one of the things that you run into, especially because it wasn't strictly made by Nintendo, it was made by Mattel, is that the quality
Barbie.
as far as, yeah, right, exactly. But the quality for that technology was pretty low. So finding one that works is the biggest challenge when it comes to finding one. And eventually I got to the point where I found one. It was for the right price and ended up picking it up. And I love it. I still use it as a gimmick thing. Every once in a while I've streamed with it to see what I can do and how much fun I can have. So for example, I went and visited my buddy who was a streamer as well. His name was Rerun Gamer. Brought it over and we played it all night and just had a blast with folks, But the Power Glove was kind of that. It was kind of an accessory. It was a controller. It was a lot of things, right? All mixed into one, and it was like a cool piece of wearable hardware, which is pretty rare as well. So,
absolutely, yeah. I mean that was something. It was something else, that's for sure. All right, so now I want to know, like, did you continue as you got older to get into the newer stuff? And tell me at what point you were just like, I'm rocking retro.
Right. So PS1 comes along, fell in love with that, played that a lot. Didn't want to play anymore. So I was kind of getting out to that point where wasn't as interested in gaming. And then I went over to a friend's house. They were playing Halo on their new Xbox. I hadn't even heard of the Xbox before, and they were playing this thing. And so I was like,
you haven't heard about it?
Yeah, I hadn't heard up to that point that it was something. Because again, I was kind of like getting myself out of gaming. So it wasn't something I was paying attention to. It wasn't really on my radar. And I was like, what is this? They're like, oh, it's an Xbox from Microsoft. I mean, like the Windows people? Like, yeah. And they, of course, they got the big Duke, handheld control, that big Duke controller and stuff. Yeah.
The big tongues.
There it is.
Yeah, the Duke. My boy.
And they were playing it. I was like, wow, this game kicks ass. This is like Doom on speed. And so me and my brother decided, because we had been going
just
over
to go back and play that now, it feels so
right.
slow. So it's funny that you bring up Doom on speed because you play Halo Infinite and then hop into a match of Halo 3 and you're just like, dude, how long is it going to take me to get across Valhalla?
And you're not wrong. And that's the funniest part is that you especially if you think about like GoldenEye was the best growing up back in the day, right? You go over, you'd play 4 player PvP, and loved it. Could not get enough of it. Played it for hours. Played it all night. You'd wake up the next day. You do whatever you needed to do. You were back playing it, for an entire full night. Now playing it today, with the N64 controller, only one thumbstick, and it's real rigid as far as where your aiming goes, where you can go. I'm spoiled by current games. If it's got a twin stick on it and you can rotate in several different directions, I have a hard time going back to it. So even though GoldenEye has a lot of prominence to it, it changed a lot as far as the gaming landscape is concerned. It's also not as easy to play nowadays.
There's a reason it came back to Xbox, and people were super salty that this wasn't like multiplayer, because they're just like, I'm not touching this unless I have friends with me.
Right, that was the whole purpose of the game, right?
Absolutely. So continuing on from the Xbox, did you get back into gaming at that point? And then I'm curious about like when the cutoff point happened, when you were like, which I'm sure, like, let me go on ahead and ask you this first before you continue this question.
Sure.
Do you have any of the current consoles?
I do. I've got a Nintendo Switch.
No PS5, no Xbox.
Not yet. Want a PS5? I have had a hard time finding one.
Okay. Last generation. Do you have any of the last generations?
I've got PS4, Xbox One, and the Wii U. So I've got all of them.
Okay, so you kept moving with kind of the trend of the new stuff.
Right.
But your name is retro.
Right.
So so what I'm kind of getting to is, I feel like you admire more retro than you do current. Am I wrong with that assumption?
No, you're spot on.
So I guess what I'm more or less at, man, I feel like I'm cutting into you like the freaking cat, or freaking or for Activision Blizzard deal. Like, I need to get to the bottom of this shit. Like, no, for real though. Like, so at what like generation would you say you were just kind of like, this feels like it's like either pandering too much to this, or it just feels like, a rerun of nostalgia, and I'd rather just play the thing that this game is spiritually success from, instead of playing the spiritual successor itself.
I think
like at what time?
Wii, Xbox 360, PS3. That was the changeover. And really, like, everybody had a Wii, right? Everyone. Didn't matter if you were a gamer or not. And that game, and that the console has a lot of great games, don't get me wrong, but it's also got a lot of really awful trash to it as well, like shovelware and just stuff that no human should ever have to consume. But like the 360 had some fantastic games. I was actually into Halo 2 for a while with that one, but I was starting to kind of feel like you described, this feeling that things aren't necessarily connecting with me with all of these games. And then, the PS3, I hadn't owned a PS3 until a few years ago. Or actually, I take it back. I just got one within the last year. That was my first experience with PlayStation 3.
Oh,
but
wow.
I'm
kind of close there with you. I picked mine up just a little over 2 years ago, I want to say. And it's because, if I'm being honest, it's because I just like got Xbox consoles. After I went from PlayStation 2, I went to Xbox because the whole music thing, like I was telling you. And I just kind of, the 360 carried the same thing. The Xbox One, I could plug my laptop into. So I was like, that fixes that problem. So I just stuck on with it until PS5 Series X generation. I was like, let me get back into the PlayStation. I was like, oh shit, well, PS5 can't play PS3 games at all. Right. I mean, unless you want to play streamed, and I don't know about you, but I'm you know what I'm saying? So I was just like, fuck. I'd rather just pay, pay the cost and go on ahead and grab a PS3 for what, like $100,
Right.
and grab the games that I missed and I absolutely love. Right now, I'm rocking Afro Samurai, fantastic. Continue.
No, and to your point, I think one of the interesting parts about that is that it's almost like the same thing like with your phone, right? Like if you're an Android person, chances are you're just going to stick with Android because it's what you're used to. If you're an Apple person, you're going to stick with Apple. And a lot of times that's the case. But every once in a while, there's something that makes that changeover. So for me, it was like Nintendo, Super Nintendo. And then the PlayStation came out. And there was a lot of stuff on there that I wanted to play. So I switched over to PlayStation, forgot Nintendo, did not get an N64 until years later. Went over a friend's house to play it, but I never actually owned one.
Sure.
And then it comes along. I was like, I'm not going to get a PS2 because I was kind of getting out of gaming. Microsoft comes out with it. It's game changer. Halo, got to play it, right? And so got into Xbox, then went with Xbox because I was used to it. I enjoyed it, and I was familiar with how it worked. And then, what's interesting about modern consoles, though, is that a lot of the games are often shared. So there isn't as many exclusives as there was back in the day. And as a result of that, sometimes it's really difficult to choose between one or the other. I mean, you're kind of like splitting hairs at a lot of points for that.
Exclusives were different as well back then, right, because they were by different publisher and it wasn't first party. Right. As like there were some around here, like technically you could say PlayStation 989 Sports and
right.
And all of that, like before SIE was really a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like they had their own dedicated studios, but they didn't lean on them like they try to do now. Like Nintendo's really the only one that's always leaned hard on their home IP.
Right. And they, you know what? And that works for them, and they can continue to do that because the level of quality they're looking for out of those IPs, they've set the standard for themselves. So anytime something comes out that's new, you're almost assured that it's going to be at least good, if not great. I mean, if you're looking at, for example, Tears of the Kingdom, right? There's no way that game wasn't going to be good. There's just no way. And, they've made some blunders in the past when it comes to Zelda, but all of the games are relatively playable and they're not bad. They're just, do you prefer this different style of gameplay versus the other, right? Do you like this story versus the other? It's going to mold with you differently, but nonetheless, throughout the years, they've had pretty good quality when it comes to their first party stuff. But they're not they don't play very nice with others. So their third party stuff.
They sure don't.
That's where they've lacked for, since the Super Nintendo. Once the Super Nintendo had kind of closed up shop and the N64 came to play, they lost all that because they had such a stranglehold over the video game market. And when that was finally broken, they had burned all their bridges, and they still haven't done much to change that, it's strange, but it's working for them considering how popular the Switch is.
Yeah, it's weird how they pretty much said, fuck y'all. And and they stood their ground, and they're still around, which is like Sega tried that, didn't work. No. A lot, and everyone, including myself, sometimes, even though I love Sega, we all like to rag on Sega and stuff like that. But Sega's just like the big guy that fell down. There were so many other casualties that people forget about. Nintendo buried so many including Sony, even including Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
Buried. And I mean, Xbox was late in the game, so they didn't really have the cemetery like Nintendo or PlayStation have. Like they have Nintendo made a cartridge cemetery out of other platforms and stuff like that.
Right.
And then Sony said, we just created a compact disc cemetery. Who wants to join? Come on in, Jaguar. You're good. Right. 3DO, jump on in. You're way too fucking expensive. You're out of your mind. like just cemeteries being built. And yeah, I think it really stabilized by the time Xbox got in there. Sony was like, I ain't getting in that cemetery, and Nintendo was like, you damn sure ain't getting me. You trying to buy me, and I ain't having it. Like you can't even have me.
Right.
So like it's really interesting for you to have said now that there were so many exclusives back then, which there were, because I mean, remember the argument between EA, right, and like Sega and Nintendo, and like Final Fantasy moving from Nintendo to PlayStation, and just the outright disrespect they were giving each other out of the door, like Nintendo being like, Sony, fuck out of here. We're rocking with what was it? They were rocking with Philips or something like that. They're like, yeah, we know we used you guys for a while, got the sound cards and everything.
Yep.
But y'all tripping. Fuck up out of here. We're rocking with Philips now, without any kind of word and whatnot. And Sony's like, you know what? Fuck you too. We're gonna make our own console then, and we're gonna take Final Fantasy while we at it. So like,
the crazy part too is, as I understand, that was a bluff, where they purposely tried to make a deal with Philips, and we're like, hey, it's collateral, because they were losing out. Because one of the things is Sony was going to have rights to almost everything when it came to the games themselves. So they owned the system, CD-ROM, they owned the media that it was being played on. So like Nintendo was kind of like, no, we want some money out of this. So they're like, oh, well, you know what? Philips will do it for us. And Sony was kind of like, well, then figure that shit out, because you know what? We're going to do it ourselves. And Nintendo was like, well, that didn't fucking pan out.
It sure didn't. It sure didn't. They created a new competitor. It's just like the end of a playthrough of Super Smash Brothers.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. New challenger. Right. It's like, oh shit. But yeah, man. So crazy time. So moving on from obviously, you said like there's a lot of exclusives. You were rocking with Xbox. You eventually had, I think you had said that you eventually had the Wii, the 360, and the PS3 simultaneously. So what was it, simultaneous?
PS3 I didn't have until like a year.
Oh yeah, yes. PS3 was way later. So you had a Wii and a 360 at the same time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Was this the first time you had two consoles in home?
Now that you mention it, yeah, that was the first time. Because at that point too, which is strange, is the Wii was relatively inexpensive compared to everybody else, right? And it was the party console, so everybody had one. If you came over the house, you all did Wii bowling or whatever, right? You played it, had fun with it. It was something that everybody did. But the Xbox was like the thing that you had in your room that you played by yourself, or you played online with friends, right?
Right.
So it was interesting. It was like almost like the Wii was technically a video game console, but it just, because of kind of the motion control gimmick too, that it just didn't feel the same as every other console you had prior to that.
Right. No, it didn't, because you're up, you're moving around, you're doing stuff. It was very popular because of the price, but it had a difference like VR does, to where it's like, I got to be in the right mood for this shit.
Exactly.
Where Xbox is just like, you just turned on the controller, sat back, put on the headphones, and you're done.
Exactly.
Everything else is done with your mind in your hands. So perfect. So going into that a little bit deeper, though, why was it that you, went and I guess I'm kind of cornering you on this question. Why is it that you went with the Xbox in particular over the PS3 at that time? Because as we kind of alluded to a little bit, a lot of these consoles had the same stuff. Mm-hmm. Was it just like Halo and the people that were kind of you were already talking to that already had an Xbox that kind of made you, like, just kind of hanging with the friends, okay, everyone's getting an Xbox. Me too. Was it one
I'd
of
love to
those?
say that it was like way more interesting than that, but you're spot on. It was friends were picking it up. I wanted to play with friends, and it was the console that I played with at college as well. And it like the first as you were getting into your first job and stuff too, it was like that release when you would come home. It was an escape from like having that tough day because you were working that first real like 8 to 5 job where there was all that stress and stuff too. So it was something that I could come back to, but because my friends were playing it as well, it was an opportunity to make that part of like a community environment. So the Xbox 360, I have a lot of love for it. It's got a lot of crap games on it too, just like the Wii. But
The
man,
best consoles have a ton of crap games. On
that's fair.
They do.
That is fair.
I mean, hate it or love it, but like when that console has so many games, you're just like, man, there's a lot of crap over here. It's probably because they got a lot of games in general,
right. And everyone wants to be on it. So yeah, no, you're spot on.
Okay, so now we're moving on into the Xbox One, PS4. I'm going to leave the Switch out of this generation. I'm going to say Wii U.
Yep.
Okay. Did you end up getting a Wii U coming from playing the Wii?
No. So there was a huge gap. I was what I'll call a late adopter. At the job I worked at, they had this point system. So you would get recognized for doing something well. They would give you points. You could trade those points in for stuff. And that's how I got both my Xbox One and my Wii U.
Wow.
Yeah. So late to the game on both of those. And to be perfectly honest with you, I have the Xbox One, I have the PS4. I haven't really played them much, to be honest with you, which is probably a sad thing.
Like since you got them.
Right.
And we're now in the next generation. You're looking over at them like sad children, like they're hungry. Yeah,
but they're also being taken care of, right? They're not getting abused, right? They're being preserved.
You're like, we run a clean establishment here. All right, so tell me a little bit about that generation. You just got done saying that you didn't play it that much, but like as somebody that's pretty much skipped the PlayStation 3 generation, you still felt the need to go out and get it. And can you explain to me? I want you to explain to me why on that one, and then I want you to kind of explain to me what it was like having the Xbox One and then also the Wii U. We all know the sad history of the Wii U and the pretty sad history of the Xbox One as well. PS4 ended up being pretty popular. Maybe that's your answer, but I don't want to answer it for you. I want you to go ahead and tell me what actually drove you to finally getting back into the PlayStation family.
So this is an interesting one. So I was big into gaming at that point. This was right when I was creating this Twitter account, getting back into the community.
On the horse.
You got it. And I actually had a follower of mine buy me one, which was fantastic.
Wow, whole console.
And it was the which one is it? It's the limited edition Days of Play, the blue one. And hugely thankful.
Wow,
that's a gift that that's hard to explain.
That's not. He didn't even do the basic one. He didn't even say, "Here's something for your trouble." He said, "Here's this piece of jewelry. Would you please wear it?"
Right. And I am extremely grateful for that. I don't think I deserve that, to be perfectly honest, but super grateful. And it definitely holds a spot. I mean, it's
this
just
man
a unique
didn't
look.
buy one console in that generation. I mean, geez, hold on a moment of silence for this man right here. This sly motherfucker right in front of me right here finessed 3 consoles. One out of a stray fan. I'm going to call him a stray because he caught a stray. He was just like, I just
I'll call him a friend. How's that? I mean, he's a friend. We still talk. So
if I can just get one generation where somebody gets me one console, that'd be great. But this man over here collecting points, got homies on the side ready to hook him up with a little something. Like, goodness gracious, I don't even want to know how you got anything. I don't even want to know how you got your Switch, bruh.
I purchased that one, so I bought that
one. Okay. All right, cool. So go on ahead and tell me about that PS4 generation for you. So you already talked about how you acquired it, which is freaking insane.
Mm-hmm.
Now, once you got it, you must have thought like there's some good games on here.
Mm-hmm.
Where do I start though?
Right, and that was one of the problems I ran into. So I went to the store, there's a lot of games to pick from, and it was a bit overwhelming because I was just starting to get back into gaming. So I wasn't 100% familiar with what PlayStation had to offer at that point, right? Because I skipped the PS3, so all of these titles that have a 2 or a 3 on them, I've never even heard of, right? And so that was what made it difficult to kind of get into PlayStation. And what I ended up doing was more or less focusing on things that I had some familiarity with, the Final Fantasies, or even going online and purchasing kind of the older stuff that they had available that was, made available for purchase. That was where my focus was with this. So sadly enough, I know I should give the PS4 a lot more love than I have. But my focus at that point had really pivoted to the retro scene. So that whole generation,
Lord.
Besides maybe the Wii U I actually got into quite a bit because of Splatoon. I liked that game a lot, so I played it quite a bit. And my wife played it. So in the Mario Kart Mario Kart 8 or whatever, played that a lot too. So that's where like it felt a bit nostalgic. Interestingly enough, like Splatoon isn't an old game. It's not an old idea, but it's from Nintendo, so it feels familiar in some capacity. So really, really enjoyed it. And that's when I made that pivot to go back to kind of the older stuff. And a lot of that had to do with a good friend of mine. Now, my name, Retro Game Brews, is actually a podcast that me and him started. So my buddy Evan, me and him got together, started a podcast, and the two things that we really enjoyed together were video games and like craft beer, right? So
there you go.
Retro game, and then they're the brews because, well, beer, but also Game Brews is also a game brew is a style of made up game by an indie developer, right? So all came together. We did it. We actually recorded 10 episodes of that. I created the Twitter account with aspirations of becoming this like big podcast. And we never really went public with it. We recorded it. We sent it to a few friends to listen to, and never had the stones to
That's interesting.
actually release it. Yeah. So me and Evan decided that maybe it wasn't something we wanted to do moving forward.
Who was more nervous to present it?
I think I was, to be perfectly honest. Evan
That's
is
interesting.
Yeah, Evan doesn't care. He's very, very chill, very cool guy. And he was one of my ushers at my wedding. I was his officiate at his wedding. So we were pretty close.
Right.
And so it was about two friends coming together. And we actually had some pretty good chemistry. But the thing is, you start off, you review a bunch of games, you review a bunch of beer, and you mix them up together. Getting a little sauced at the end of these episodes, saying stupid stuff, having to go back and listen to myself being pretty inebriated was not as fun as I thought it was going to be. And then going, well, can we include that? Like that doesn't, we shouldn't say that, like, cause you're drunk. So you're just saying whatever comes to mind.
Right.
And so, and also we were doing it like once a week. So having a hangover once a week wasn't great either. So
I can see some holes in that plan.
Right. Exactly. At first it sounded like a great idea, but as you got through the actual plan, it didn't quite work out. So, but I created that Twitter account And then I started to find more people who were into like retro gaming because Evan got me into the whole collecting scene when it came to retro. He's been collecting since he was a kid, right? So his collection is absolutely enormous. He's got some really unique stuff that he picked up for $1 here, $2 there out of a bargain bin that are worth hundreds, if not thousands. Yeah. So
it's insane how that works.
Like
I remember people telling me how cheap Panzer was.
Right.
Like Panzer. Right. Oh yeah, I remember picking that game up for $20 or something like that. You look online, it's going for a couple of G's right now, and it's just like, as a game collector like myself, like you, it's just deflating. It's just it's just like I actually want to play that game. I don't care about its worth. And it's just astronomical. I mean, just a simple game like Super Smash Brothers Melee is like $120.
Oh yeah, easily
right now, and it's just like I just want to use Roy. Like I don't care. I don't care about like I want to use Roy, but I don't think I want to spend $150 to hit a bag 800 yards.
Right.
Like you know how you do the charge up and you hit that little training bag or whatnot. Yeah, I'm not paying $150 to do that, bruh. Nah. But yeah, man. So you got into you started to get further into retro the more the new stuff started to come out. I'm starting to see that trend kind of happening. So because you're just like, man, these three got dusty over here, man. I don't know what to do with you anymore. I mean, I take care of you, give you a safe place to sleep, but I can't feed you. But anyways, so now we're finally at today's consoles. You said earlier you wanted to like set your saving up for PS5 or whatnot.
Yep.
Or just trying to find the right time to get one, more or less. So there's that. You already have the Switch, which is pretty fantastic console. Especially if power isn't the main narrative for you.
Yeah.
It does games and it does them very well. And then as for the Xbox, you didn't really say anything about that. I'm wondering if you're just rocking that PC wise, or you're looking to possibly invest in it once something catches your eye. Where are you at with that?
It's for some reason or another, I just don't feel like I'm in a hurry to pick one up, but I do want to do Game Pass. Game Pass seems awesome. It's a great way to expose yourself into new and interesting games that you may not really have ever thought about picking up on your own. And for $10 a month, that's a steal. That is, I mean, I know that they've said it's not profitable. I get it. I get why, because you're getting so much for so little. So my guess is that they'll probably raise the price on that, but nonetheless, it's something that I want to get into. I just haven't really found myself. And it seems like the PS5 right now, maybe because it's hard to find one, seems more elusive. So it seems more attractive. I don't know. Psychology wise, I could explain it 100 different ways, but for something about it just seems more, like interesting.
I got you. The controller is super dope on the PS5. Oh, yeah. I'll give you that one right there.
Yep.
I mean, I have one. I have the Series X. Enough with that. I'm just gonna stop right there. So you're looking to get those, but now let's go backwards real quick, because like I said, you're more into retro games and stuff now.
Right.
So what are the pickups that you've made during more recent generations that have nothing to do with these generations? So like, as a retro gamer that like yourself, I'm wondering, what are some things that, instead of getting the new Horizon Forbidden West or I'm not sure, maybe Elden Ring or something like that, what have you picked up instead? Because as we just got done saying, these retro games are crazy priced now.
Oh yeah,
some of them are, and sometimes you're like, I don't want the wife to see this.
Yeah.
Like, this is,
you ain't lying.
spending way too much on this bullshit right now, but I'm gonna buy it. Well, I mean that's how I felt when I got that's how I felt when I got like the Zelda in box Nintendo
Mhm.
game. I
Yep.
was just like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, I felt the same way because it's sitting right there. Yeah. Like I have this game in like 15 different places. Like, what the fuck do I need a little like Game and Watch looking thing that plays the same game that I've always had? But I had to have it.
Well, yeah. What are some of those recent pickups that you've got though that were pretty near and dear? Something that you're proud of that you purchased.
So for
If
it's, I mean,
proud's the right
obviously
word.
yeah, it's for the Switch, right? So that's where most of those newest purchases come from. Um, and a lot, ironically, a lot of it is stuff that is remakes of older stuff because I'm, like I said, I'm into retro. So, for example,
Well,
recently I
what
picked up. Oh,
I
go ahead.
think that we may have got the question mixed up. I'm wondering, like, what kind of new things that you've picked up that are retro.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Got it. So that's a constant that I always find myself kind of, and that's actually interesting. So, and I'm sure you share the same sentiment that half of the collecting part is the hunt, is to go find stuff that if you didn't put the extra effort in, you wouldn't have found, or nobody would have found, right? Unless you asked the right questions from somebody
For
at
the
a
right
yard sale.
price at the right
Right,
place.
exactly.
Because this
Exactly.
motherfucker over here was tripping, but y'all
Right.
cool.
And so like I picked up a Philips CDI when I went on vacation
Ooh,
to
damn.
yeah, I've always wanted one. No, I take it back. I'm sorry. A Panasonic 3DO, not a Philips CDI. Panasonic 3DO.
Even
Yep,
better.
yep. And
I have a gold star
because
one right here. I have
yeah,
a gold
nice.
star right here. Yeah.
Nice.
Go on ahead, brother. Go on ahead.
No, but
Preach.
I've always wanted to play Star Control 2 because I played the Star Control 3 back in the day on PC. So I've always wanted to check out 2, and 2 is fantastic on that system. So super happy with that purchase. What else have we picked up? I had a friend send me an N64, but as a joke, because I'm a little critical of the N64. That is one of my
Why?
shtick. So
Oh, you're gonna
it's a
have to break
small.
this down for me, man.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me
Okay. Okay.
hold on real quick. You're gonna have to break this shit down for me, bro. What's
Sure.
happening?
So the one thing I run into is that there are a lot of people out there that claim the N64 is like the greatest console of all time. So that's where like it's become my shtick to kind of point out that there's some glaring holes in the N64. So for one, obviously the controller is not great, and especially if you're collecting for it nowadays,
Man, I ripped
getting
my
a
thumb
thumb,
open a couple times on that
yeah,
thing, man.
yeah, yeah,
Jeez.
and
That
then getting a
plastic thing.
thumbstick to try to like have a little bit of bounce back too. It's hard to find because everybody and their mother picked up Mario Party and grinded down that analog stick so that it no longer works right. So that's one of them. The other one is that it's only got what, like 290 or so games that were released in North America. So it's a pretty small library. You compare that to the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo before it. It's not even a quarter for the most part of what you're seeing on those consoles. It has maybe 2 RPGs on the whole thing, coming from a company that had all the RPGs prior to that, besides maybe Phantasy Star. And then just from a gameplay elements to it, I would say that, you know, quality of games, it was that transition from 2D to 3D. So it has not aged well, at least in my opinion. So those are like the 3 key points for me, right? And so I have expressed that opinion online. Not everybody likes that. So it got to the point where people have now just started to kind of playfully bust my chops over it, right? They'll like tag me in N64 stuff, or they'll just say the word N64 to try to like, just have some fun with me. So I totally get it. Everybody's having a good time. It's a little tongue in cheek, like a little nudge nudge. And so one of the guys who does it constantly decided to send me an N64 a while back. And so I've got it. It's sitting there, right? That's been an interesting kind of pickup for me. So also one of the weirdest things that I've picked up recently doesn't have to do with consoles. I was doing some research on toys to life. So, like your amiibos, your Disney Infinities, that kind of stuff. And going through the history of like where that started from, one of the things that came up was this PC game called Redbeard's Pirate Quest. And it's a plastic pirate ship about this big, right? You get these little figurines, you put it on there, and like when you move them around the actual pirate ship, it interacts with the game. And this is like 1998 when this came out.
Wow.
Right. So I was just curious while I was doing research. I was like, you know what? Let's go see if this thing's on eBay. Sure enough, it was on eBay. It was like 30 something dollars, complete in box.
$30.
Yep.
I turned my head like that because I was like, I don't want to hear this price.
No,
But that's not that bad. $30 is
Right.
crazy cheap.
Yeah. And so I was like, why not? So free shipping, had it shipped to my house. And the only thing I have to figure out is to try to get some like little dongles so that I can plug it into my PC, because obviously I have a modern PC and all
Right.
those old hookups don't exactly work. So, but looking forward to eventually getting that to work one day.
That's crazy.
Mhm.
So here's a wild question that I kind of have for you. So, I mean, those were some pretty interesting pickups right there. But as a person that loves retro gaming and you also enjoy collecting, I can see a list of stuff behind you. I want to know where you're at with the new popular thing that is emulation. I mean, it's not exactly new, but I feel
Right.
like it's more prevalent today and talked about more today and pissing off Nintendo more today than ever.
My stance is not extreme in one direction or another. So I think there is a large contingency of folks who are emulation is bad, it's pirating, never do it. And there's a large set of folks who are like, I only emulate games because it's free. I'm somewhere in the middle. I appreciate when there's a game that's just too expensive to buy, but you still want to play. Like, for example, if you want to play Little Samson, that's thousands of dollars for a loose cartridge. If you want to go ahead and play Little Samson, then get an emulator, play it, and be happy. And at the end of the day, I don't think you're hurting anybody by doing that, right? Nintendo isn't spending a whole lot of money to try to get money off of Little Samson nowadays. They're not putting it on their eShop. It's not something that's readily available. So if it's something that is lost to the annals of time, except for a physical copy of it, then to me, it makes sense as far as emulation is concerned. Now, as a collector, that certainly does take away some of the value of these games, because people who can play them would shell out more money to get them. But I'm not in it necessarily to get money out of my collection. My collection is to, for one, have something cool to look at, but two, the biggest part of it is I want to play the stuff. And I like playing on physical
Right.
because you don't have the lag that you would run into with emulation. So as far as I'm concerned, I just is as long as you're not emulating currently available games that you can pick up at Target, Best Buy, Walmart, whatever, I don't find it to be a problem.
Okay, well then let me take it just one step further.
Mhm.
Emulating current games like Tears of the Kingdom on a Steam Deck.
Right.
Does something like that bother you?
A little, because I think when you look at it from the point of view of a company just put a lot of effort and time into creating something that, they rely on those sales to be successful, move forward, be able to exist. Now, granted, Nintendo has enough liquid cash to like stick around for 150 years at a loss, so it's not like they're strapped for cash, but the success of that game will dictate what kind of games you're looking at moving forward. Where something that isn't being sold anymore, if you're emulating that, that's not having an impact on the industry moving forward. So if you're going to skirt the idea and essentially kind of, to me, it's not emulation at that point, it's kind of pirating, if you will, where you're playing a game on something that's not intended to be, that's current, that you could purchase brand new from a retailer right now. That's a little different. And especially too when you're looking at things like not just Tears of the Kingdom. If you're talking about games that are like indie games and you're taking some time ripping those and creating emulation for that, you're taking money out of somebody's pocket who really needs it too. So
Yeah.
there's that thin line, but I think that it really cuts off with, is it available for purchase? If that's the case, then I'm out.
So it more or less sounds like it's like do whatever you want as long as you paid your due for it at least.
Or somebody did, right?
So I mean, I paid $70 for Tears of the Kingdom, right?
Hmm?
You're not gonna sit here and be mad if I'm like, you know what? I'm playing it on my Steam Deck. I'm gonna figure out a way to play it on there because I already paid my due for it.
Then yeah, go for it.
But as for somebody that's just like, fuck Nintendo,
Right. I don't want to pay.
I'm
$70
just not going to pay them, but I'm going to play their best game right now.
Right.
It's a little scummy.
It is. It's a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I like emulation a lot. I don't do it really at all.
Mm-hmm.
I do it for some things. Specifically, I got one of these guys. I'm sure you're pretty familiar with them.
Everdrive.
Yeah, I have one of those for my Genesis, obviously, and it's fantastic. But the games that I really and plus this is old as hell, right? It's not, a new Sega game isn't coming out or Sega Genesis game isn't coming out or something like that, and I have a stack of Sega games as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I didn't buy my Genesis to buy that card because I could just do that on my PC. Right. I got that thing because sometimes it even helps me shop. As crazy as that sounds.
No, you're not wrong. You're absolutely right.
Going through that list and seeing when I seen X-Men on that list, I went and bought X-Men, the actual hard box and everything on it because I was like, I forgot about this game with Magneto floating in the middle and stuff like that. Like that game was fantastic, but it was also at the right price. It was only like $20 or $30.
Mm-hmm.
As you were saying, if I see a game on there that's like $300, $400, I'm not gonna buy that. It's old. And it's way past the MSRP of it. It's not even fair.
Right.
You're asking me to buy a Series S or a Genesis game or one Genesis
like Crusader
game.
Ascenti or something like that. Yeah.
I could go get a Series S on sale and get a couple months of Game Pass for that $300 that I would have spent on that one Genesis game. So in that sense, I'm like, yo, I'm gonna emulate. But yeah, in the sense of some of these newer games or just flat out paying respect to something that I absolutely love. Yep. Like I said, the X-Men game or Scarface for the original Xbox or PlayStation or, Shenmue for the Dreamcast. I'm like, yeah, it might be like $40 or $50, but that's not so out of my price range. I feel like I have to go emulate it.
Right.
So to me, it's like that balance of, would I pay that much for it? If not, then I'm probably going to emulate it. Mm-hmm. Because if it's new enough, it's going to be at an MSRP price. It's not going to be at some disrespectful, let me take advantage of your pockets price.
Exactly.
All right. So thanks everybody that's listening right now. Make sure you hit that like button if you haven't already. Share it out. I'd really appreciate it, you guys. Thank you so much for showing up to this episode of Behind Them Sticks with Retro Game Brews. It's been fantastic so far. We got a little bit more life left or gas left in the tank, so we're gonna keep on moving. I'm gonna move now. I'm gonna kind of move the conversation over to what you do now. And kind of how you started. You kind of brushed over it a little bit with saying that you and your buddy, how you guys got your names, getting saucy on the mic and stuff like that. Like you guys are doing your thing for a little while. But let's go let's go a little bit before that. Mm-hmm. And then since you already talked about that, up to you if you want to jump over that afterwards and then head into more current things. Yeah. But I want to know, like, at what point and what generation were you like, I want to make content out of this stuff?
You know what?
Why?
So the collecting piece was really inspired, right, by Evan. So me and him would go out together. It was something we would do on the weekends. We would go retro game stores that were local. We would go to garage sales, anything, like just drive around and find some stuff. So, and when we were doing that, we were talking about games that we liked, we didn't like. We talk about beer that we liked and we didn't like. We were also listening to podcasts. And so that was like, hey, this seems comfortable enough. Do you think that maybe we could just do this together and share it with other people? And I was like, yeah, that seems to make a lot of sense. And that's where that like bug to create content came from, was just, it was something we were already doing. So why not share it with other people? Not to say that we thought we were like terribly interesting or anything like that, but it was something we were both knowledgeable about and we were having fun doing it. So why not? And Evan created his own channel on YouTube where he was reviewing video games, but he would also make like a cocktail that had to do with that specific game. So, for example, I had a copy of Clay Fighter's Sculptor Cut for the N64. So he made this drink called the Gumby to be similar to the taffy guy in that game. So he would drink it, he would play it. That's what he would do. Then I decided I wanted to make my own channel where I would just record myself playing boss fights for the first time and just seeing how far I could go. Both of those didn't really work out. In fact, going back and watching that stuff is super cringe. It's rough. It's real
Usually
rough.
always is, going back and watching your old stuff. You're just like, poor you.
Yeah. Well, not only that is that I was recording off of a tablet, like a Samsung tablet, and I was just pointed at the screen, right? And that you're just playing in the background. You can hear like my voice from way far behind. You can tell I'm standing behind the tablet. Sounds like I'm yelling in like a cave somewhere, right? The audio was so bad. And then, obviously things didn't work out with the podcast between me and Evan. So I started to get into the whole Twitter community, and I still missed that like content creation piece to it. So Twitch was really starting to get popular at that time. So I was like, you know what? I'll give it a shot. Why not? So I got on Twitch. I played for a little while. One of the nice things was by creating a following on Twitter, I had a lot of people come and watch me, critique me, give me pointers, that kind of thing. And it worked out fine, but to be honestly, it wasn't for me. I couldn't do it on a regular schedule. I would finish afterwards and be exhausted because I'm an introvert by nature. So having to talk like to an inanimate group of people was just difficult. Where, you're in a podcast, you're talking back and forth. It's a conversation, right? Right. And so didn't really do much of that. And then had an idea. So I was playing Donkey Kong on the NES because I'm an adult now, so we don't go out and get drunk on New Year's. Just stay home and get drunk, right?
Right.
So I was playing Donkey Kong on the NES as like New Year's was coming, and I was getting pretty far on it. I was like, oh man, my score is getting up there pretty high. I wonder how I compare to other people, because I wasn't going to go on speed run. I knew I wasn't going to compare to those, but like, people in the community, your average Joe, like how did I compare to them? And so I just posted a contest and said, hey, everybody, you got a week to put up your best score. Tag me with a photo and, we'll rank everybody. Now I got blown out of the freaking water. I was almost last place. So
yeah, you don't fuck with
very very humbling experience. But people started to really get into it. So I decided, this is something I can do. So I started creating this thing called RGB High Score, right? So it was like a hashtag and all this kind of stuff. We would do a game every week, and I ended up bringing in more and more people. It got to the point where, like 50 people were submitting scores each week, and it was really fun and exciting. And so I was like, I could do this on Twitch, just do like a one-night tournament for this stuff. So took some people who were already competing in RGB High Score, grabbed people who, had a capture card and were, streamers themselves. It's like, let's do this online. So we played F-Zero for the first time, and it was like, fastest time wins, and it's like best of 3, and
Great game.
had an absolute blast with that. And so started doing it like every month after that, and just bringing in more people, bringing in more interesting games, doing stuff that was multiplayer using the Switch, which is one of the reasons why I picked up the Switch, and just using Discord and then OBS, kind of similar to what we're doing right now, just with the gameplay and commentating over top of it. Just, pointing out things that were happening. I had my partner, Crunchy, guy named by the name of Crunchy Kong, and we would just like kind of shoot the shit and talk to each other about what's happening in the game or just random other stuff while people were playing. And we had a bracket system, and we would do all this kind of stuff, and it turned into something that was really, really fun. Over time, life happens, get to the point where you can't really keep up with it as much, because as soon as you miss 1 month, then it kind of starts to snowball, and you miss a few other months, you make more excuses for it. So it kind of fell out of favor. But what I do every year is I do a charity stream tournament for Stand Up to Cancer. So the last 2 years, we've done Mario Kart 8 on at twitch.tv retro Game Brews, and we raise money for Stand Up to Cancer, which is fantastic. And so this year doing the same thing, and that's really where that content comes from. But I still wanted to do regular content. I wanted to create something. So started a podcast with a few friends, did that for like 74 episodes, and then the formula itself was getting to the point where things needed to change. People's kind of parted and went their own ways, but me and Blue stuck together, and we brought in Donnie, or at least asked him to be a part of this. And by starting Gamers Week podcast, it's been an absolutely amazing experience, and we are crushing our numbers that we've seen from downloads and things like that. So it's been really successful. We've got a really fun patron only community that interacts via Discord. It just keeps bringing us back. And that's where, though, that desire to continue to create content has allowed me to push myself and just try out new things. For some reason or another, I want to share the passion I already had. And I think a lot of that stems from just those first couple of interactions of creating that Retro Gamers account and just seeing that there were other people out there that were just as nerdy as me.
Man, I mean, that's a pretty interesting way to come up right there. I mean, you had a few different tries at it. I mean, let's keep it a buck real quick.
Mm-hmm.
People, I feel like from the outside looking in, and I was one of them people before, you don't know how much energy, time, frustration, failures, ideas that just don't flourish go through a creator's mind.
Oh, yeah.
When they know they got something that they feel like doing, but they just keep trying to jam the square in the circle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like you're trying to find the circle and you keep hitting all these other damn shapes, and you're just like, damn it. When am I going to get to one where it feels like it's just smooth, where it feels like it's not just like a task?
Right, like you're forcing it, that you're just trying hard to make this successful. And you know what, that weighs on you emotionally as well. As a content creator, one of the biggest things that you want to do is to create content for people to enjoy. And if you're not enjoying it, I think it shows, right?
100%.
And that comes across that way. So people aren't going to want to watch your stuff if you're somebody who's trying to force it. You got to find that. You're right. But the thing is, though, it's not just this magic formula to do what everybody else is doing. You got to find that one thing that you can do, that you can contribute, that fits for you, that you're passionate about. And yes, you want to make content for other people to enjoy, but you got to enjoy it first. So yeah, you might have something that's super, super niche, but I guarantee you there's somebody out there that's into the same stuff you are. You just got to find them.
And the amount of okay you have to be with sucking
Right.
for a good amount. Like it doesn't matter if you're great at your craft. Sometimes the numbers show up in a couple of days. Sometimes it takes a couple of years.
Right.
Not everyone's built the same, and not everyone's content gets shared the same way either through these algorithms and stuff like that. So for goodness sakes, if you find something that you like and you feel good about it, feel good enough to you feel good enough to come back and do it repeatedly, but you're understanding of where you stand in this particular niche of content and being a YouTuber or Twitch partner or whatever. Like, you have to not only be comfortable with it, but also be consistent and be realistic with yourself. And those are so hard to do.
Oh yeah.
Like here I am I'm not quite at 2 years of doing this, but I'm still trying to figure out rhythm.
No, I hear you.
Through all this time. And some days I'm like, man, I am knocking this out of the park. And other days I'm just like, this couldn't go any worse. But the fact of the matter is I'm just like, well, I'll just pack up my bat and my ball and come back tomorrow and try it.
Sure. And that's what you have to do. You have to be willing to fail sometimes and learn from that. In fact, one of the things I've always said is that if anything is worth doing, you can do it for 10 episodes from a content spectrum. And really, that's 10 episodes depending. So I'm talking 10 streams, 10 YouTube videos, 10 podcast episodes. But if you're talking if you're a TikToker, right, that's maybe 100 videos. And set yourself a limit to say, I'll keep doing this. I'll change up the formula. Sure. I'll try new ideas, but I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing just to see where it goes. Because there's going to be a point in which you're going to catch that rhythm and it's going to work and you're going to feel good about it. And even to your point, even the days that you're not super jazzed about it, it gives you that drive to try it again. We've got episodes that I'm absolutely in love with 100%. I laughed the entire time we were doing it, and I think it shows. And there are episodes where I was having a bad day, and I didn't really bring my game. And so that also shows. But the difference, I think, is that I know what I'm capable of, and therefore I have to set that standard for me moving forward. So I've got a limit that I need to find myself. But again, it's just about wanting to come back and push yourself. And don't be afraid to try something new at least once too. This whole Professor Rybred's Gaming History 101. We started this podcast this time around. I was like, I want to do something different. I'm big into gaming history and I like researching this stuff. Let me see if I can do something like that. And it worked, strangely enough. It was a risk because not everybody's into that kind of stuff. But I think one of the things I wanted to do was wanted to present it not as just here are the facts, but this is the story. This is the emotions. These are what people were thinking when they went through that. And that was my big focus, but it was a big risk. We were starting a new podcast, for crying out loud. And if that segment doesn't work, your whole thing could sink, So right time, right place, but nonetheless, trying new things and seeing if they work is not a bad formula. But again, to your point, just coming back. Some days you just gotta. It's that saying on. I think I've got videos on TikTok or Twitter that say some days can't be unfucked. So if that's the case, go to sleep. Try it again tomorrow.
It can't be unfucked. That's great. So now we hit on kind of the history of how you got into content creating. A little bit. We hit about the halfway point. We already know what you ended up doing with the whole Games Brew the original or Game Brews the original thing that went down. Now let's talk about the transition into finding the people that you got now. Like, so how did you find your other co-hosts?
It was all on Twitter. So this is a match made on Twitter. Uh, Donnie, he was somebody I kind of found pretty early on. Actually, Blue was too, but Donnie, he was streaming on Twitch and he had like 1 or 2 viewers, and I thought this guy was hilarious. He was playing Dead by Daylight as well as um, what's the name of that game? It's one of the hardest shooters that came out on Xbox as well. It's an indie game. It's 1930s cartoon. Like, why can't I think of that?
1930s cartoon.
It's a cup.
Cuphead?
Cuphead. There it is. Perfect. Sorry.
It's a cup.
I was there. I was getting there. He would play Cuphead and Dead by Daylight, and he would curse. He would just get upset, and I would mess with him. For example, every time he died in Cuphead, I would send him 1 bit and just say "pity bitty," and he'd be like, "F you." And so we had this great relationship, right? So we ended up getting into being friends, and he actually joined that RGB high score. And come to find out, Donnie has this unique ability where he can take a game in about a week that he's never played before, not even familiar with, and master it. In fact, he's gotten a few world records via not speedrun, but Twin Galaxies. He's got a few world records for a few games that he just picked up playing those tournaments, which is insane. Think of somebody who's like, yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna get the world record in a week from the first time I've ever touching this game.
Right.
And so, yeah, oh my God. And so, like that relationship just built over time. Me and him became pretty good friends. We would chit chat once in a while. He would, hop on. He would be involved in all the different tournaments I was doing. And it just, Donnie became one of those
Get
people
out of my
online.
tournament. That's what that's real retro. He's like, get out of here. Yeah, I know what you're doing. I don't even have a chance anymore. I give up.
Exactly. And then Blue was an interesting one. So at the time, Blue was involved with this other group of people, and she was just talking about kind of her love for games. And at that point too, Blue was real shy. She hadn't shown her face on the internet, and she wasn't into that kind of stuff, and just ended up meeting with her, talking about very kind of protected, and watched her over time kind of come out of her shell now. And she was using Twitter at the time, talk about video gaming, talk about retro gaming as well. But also,
wait, are you talking about the same lady that I heard talking stuff about? Oh, poor you, 6 years or 4 years or something like that. We've been waiting 6 for same person.
Oh yeah, that's Blue.
Wouldn't have thought she was shy.
And you know what? I don't think that she is shy when she's around the right people. She's kind of like one of those omniverts, right? She gets around somebody she's comfortable with. She's a chatty Cathy, and she's extremely intelligent. She has some really, really great insights into this stuff, and a lot of that stems from the fact that she's a writer by trade as well. So she does freelance writing. She's been on websites like Screen Rant and a few others that she's written for over the years. And so she's also very articulate by how she kind of presents herself. And she was doing a podcast prior to that with a few friends as well. Did a bunch of episodes with that, but that, as time goes along, things just end up kind of going south a little bit. So, when I got in contact with her when she had ended that last podcast, I was like, hey, so you want to do one with me? Like, like, can we work this out together? And she was like, yeah, sure, that'll work. And so we did that for a while. That ended, and brought on Donnie, because Donnie was a guest on that show, the show previously. And he was probably one of our best guests, because he was a friend, right? We knew him, we interacted with him. It wasn't somebody that was, unfamiliar to us.
You didn't have to feel him out. You just already knew what it was.
Exactly. So I know I can bust his chops right off the bat. No problem. He's not going to take offense to it. In fact, he's going to throw it right back at me, which is exactly what I want. I want some of that fun banter, But it just feels right for the two of, or the three of us, when we come together. And so much so, we've been doing a patron only cast in which we just turn on the mics and we talk for an hour. And there's always something that comes out of it. It's always probably not safe for work. It's always a little raunchy, but we just have a good time. There's no
That's what
agenda,
happens. That's what happens
right?
in the
And
green room. It gets
exactly,
real.
exactly. And we post that every single week for the patrons, and so they get a kick out of it too. It's just us doing what we would normally do, and it's
No
been
doubt.
an absolute blast. Yeah,
Like I said, you guys have that chemistry within your guys' show. I love the way you guys have your segments on, the way you guys aren't just constantly over talking the hell out of each other. I mean, very respectful, very articulate, and just like it can go from serious to goofy and like very quickly on your show. And I've caught that just by watching. I think I only seen or not seen, but listened to like 3 episodes, and I think that last one was my favorite one, just because of the weirdness, and also turn around and seeing my wife right there, and she's listening and having a good time. It's like,
love it.
yeah. This is it right here. This is it. This is good. All right, so now from there, I got some quick hitter kind of questions that I want to ask you as we start to wind down and get close towards the end of the show. I like to usually keep these things around 2 hours. Sometimes it gets out of hand, but today it seems like it's going pretty smoothly, and I'm liking the pace of this and whatnot. It's been a fantastic show. Thank you again for coming out here and doing this with me this this evening. It's been great. So I want to ask you, as a person that is into retro games, just like you are, I want to know specifically, like, what is like the most memorable moment of like a retro game that you've had that you're just like, and I want you to aim more towards like teenage to adult. I don't want you to go too far back to when you were a little kid, because I mean, I feel like as a little kid, I mean, we were wow. Everything was wild back then, right? I mean, there is definitely some specific crazy wow moments, but I feel like once you're a little bit more mature, you take it a little bit more serious. So, what was maybe that wow moment within a video game where you're just like, you either purchased it and you're just like, bruh, or you beat it and you were just like speechless or angry that it was over? There's been a few games where I beat it and I'm just like, son of a bitch, like, what am I gonna play now?
What's interesting is that those moments actually started for me when I got back into retro gaming, when I checked out games I never played before. So this is more like, later on, but when I was a teenager, uh, the one thing that stuck out to me was the one time me and my brother, we were on vacation with my parents, went to Las Vegas, and we were staying at the Circus Hotel. No, I take it back. We were at Excalibur, but we went to Circus. And my parents are going to go gambling, right? They're going down on the floor. I'm not allowed there, but they had an arcade for the kids. And one of the things they had there was the 6-person X-Man arcade. And I knew it from when I was a kid. Me and my brother played it a bunch of times, but I never really got into it or got serious because that's a quarter muncher all day, right? Steals your quarters left and right. So I got a bucket of like $50 worth of quarters, me and my brother. And he's playing as Colossus. I'm playing as Wolverine. And so we got the two things, we're going through it, and we're just like getting far enough. We're like, let's see if we can beat this, And all of a sudden, people are coming in and out while we're playing. They're picking up a character, putting a quarter in, playing for a little while, and then they're heading out. So it's like this constant stream of new people. We're talking to each other, having a good time. It's all the whole community aspect to it. And we're getting close to beating it. And all of a sudden, I realize that there's like a crowd assembled around us. They're all like watching.
Classic.
Right. They're watching. They're cheering us on. When something good happens, they're like, yeah. And, like the random high fives are coming and stuff. And, we beat it eventually in like this big eruption of like, yeah, like it was like this weird shared moment. And I remember thinking like, it doesn't get much better than this. Like I just did this in front of an entire crowd. And maybe that's where like the content creation thing came into play, where that was the seed that was planted. And I remember leaving there feeling like disappointed that I wasn't going to be able to experience that again. I mean, my brother, at that time too, we're teenagers. So he was my older brother. He was into girls and, trying to go to college and stuff. And I'm still a little bit younger than he is. And, there was this disconnect. We used to be pretty good friends when we were younger, and we were starting not to necessarily be as close because he was off doing his own thing with his friends. And so to have that moment shared with him was also pretty profound, because again, we were kind of splitting up. And then, into our 20s, we became friends again. And now my brother's one of my best friends. In fact, he was a best man at my wedding, and
Man.
I was best man at his. So it's strange though that connection started to kind of find its way back. Because as soon as we played that, like, he was more, I don't know, like, just more aware that I existed at that point.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then like that seed just kept going, and yeah. So it's not only was it like a really good memory, but man, it felt so good to beat that game. Cause again, we probably went through half the quarters, $25 worth of money.
Yeah.
My parents came like expecting to like us to still have a lot of money left for that. And they're like, what happened? Like, we beat X-Man, man. Like, I don't understand.
Bodies. Like Arnold said, bodies. Oh man. I mean, that's a fantastic story. That reminds me of one of my favorite moments that I had not that long ago with my father-in-law. We went to an arcade. It was one of those arcades that had like go-kart and indoor go-karting and, bowling, and then a big old arcade area with a bunch of spots to waste your money on. And we took part in wasting our money for sure. We played Fireteam Raven for Halo, the arcade game, and we beat it. Me and my father-in-law beat it. And throughout that time, it was very similar as to you, except it was family. They'd hop in, slide the card, play on the game for a little bit, die, slide it one more time, play a little bit, and then be like, whatever, I give up. And me and father-in-law just kept going, kept sliding, and when we finally rolled credits on it, like, that was one of those moments that we just kind of looked at each other, son or son-in-law, father-in-law, and we'd never done anything like that together before.
Sure.
But we played video games together. Like we have like over 100 days in Arc like together.
Right.
Which is insane.
That's awesome.
But we never like played together like that, especially in like a public setting.
Mm-hmm.
So getting out of our seat and just being like, yo, we really just did that. We lost about $20-$30, but we really just did that. Like, that's just something that just, as you said, just goes to the grave with you.
Right.
It's a very powerful moment.
It's funny you mentioned that. Me and my brother did that as well last year. We played Fireteam Raven at the Rochester Museum of Play, which is this huge complex in Rochester, New York, upstate New York. And one of their big focuses, of course, is gaming and video games. And they had a version of that, and it was free play. So I can't claim that. Free play. So I can't claim. Yeah, right. Well, that's it. I can't take a whole lot of like pride that I beat it, because it was just like, continue.
Bastard.
You pay money though to get into the museum, but still, that was super fun though. That game is great though. It's enormous. Holy crap, is it huge? But that's fun, and that's great though.
You're just killing me with all these free things today. You're killing me. Getting these consoles. I'm over here telling you how I dropped my bottom dollar, and you're just like, yeah, man, I just hit the continue button. I didn't have to do shit. It was great. I mean, yeah, man. The experience is the experience. Whether you spend all that crazy amount or nothing, being in just a public scenery with with your friend, your family member, or whatever, and destroying something, and then getting out of the booth just to remember And, it's like, oh, the sun.
Yeah, the eyes. Right?
It's like, oh, the sun. Oh, there's people here. Oh, like it's just one of those feelings where it's like we're in the middle of this crowd and we just decimated something, and now we're going our separate ways, and it's like a proud and shameful moment at the same time. A little bit.
It's a mixed feeling.
There's a lot of mixed feelings, absolutely. All right, well, moving on to the next question I have for you. I wanted to know, or better yet, I want you to tell me some of the people that were most inspiring to you to get into this space that is, content creating, video games in general. I already know, and I'm going to go ahead and throw the shout out for you. Shout out to your grandparents, bruh. got the 2600 on deck. I don't know how many people can say I went to my grandparents' house and got my gaming, and I know I couldn't say that. I got lucky if I could get the controller to the TV. I'm telling you, man. But
right.
But
you
going ahead and
controller, man.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was the controller going up there, moving the
rabbit
antenna
ears
and whatnot. I was grandma's electrician. Yeah, you can go behind the TV and see what's going on with that. Oh, I don't know what's going on with that. But yeah, going ahead, let everybody know some of the people that really meant a lot to you getting into gaming and content and all that stuff.
So for one, gaming too was my mom. My mom was a huge supporter of that. She got a kick out of me when I was a kid playing games. One of the things we do, got that like big RCA television with like the wood grain around the outside of it,
that heavy bitch.
Mm-hmm. And
did it have the doors on the bottom?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, the glass doors. Yeah, you already know. Yep, with the little magnet on top.
Yeah. And so one of the things I would do, because I was playing like Kung Fu for the NES at the time, and I would like kick along with it, like I wanted the Power Glove.
You were, you were.
And
my cousins were like that.
Hilarious.
They were literally it was like they were playing VR, bro. Just like, bro, you fighting in the game. You ain't fighting in real life. What the hell? You about to throw that controller across the room?
I got to be honest with you, though. I still lean when I drive in games a little bit.
I do that too. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah.
Especially when you hit it, you lean in and you're like,
yeah. Absolutely. So like my mom, though, she was a big supporter of it. She got a kick out of it. She was always buying me games, always taking me places to do that stuff. So she was really the one who helped kind of facilitate that. My dad, on the other hand, he played the NES like the first night we got it, and he was playing Mario Bros. He had work the next day, and all of a sudden he realized it was 6 a.m. and he was still playing, and he had to go to work the next day. So he swore off gaming from that point on. I don't blame the man, but he clearly liked it enough to play all night long and get as far as possible as he could. But after that, like him at gaming was, I'm done. So, as time went on, of course, got into this whole retro community and found people like, Angry Video Game Nerd, really liked his content. That was something that
he's funny,
resonated with me. Yeah, he's a funny guy, but he
very
also
passionate.
talked about, well, you ain't kidding. And then when it came to podcasting, I was introduced to Pat the NES Punk through that. And I used to listen to his show pretty regularly, the Completely Unnecessary podcast with him and Ian. Ended up actually meeting Ian a few times here. But, that was something where it was sitting there listening to that while me and Evan were kind of bantering back and forth, is where we realized that maybe this could be something that we wanted to do. Right. And then starting that, like, kind of grew into other podcasts that weren't exactly gaming related. So things like, Freakonomics and boring, like adult podcasts. But it made me realize that, one of the things that you can do really well is also edit it so that it has a flow to it, like it's a show, like a YouTube video. You can do that. If it's audio only, you can definitely get away with doing that. And it makes it feel like it's, like an old timey radio show, if you will. And there's something inherent about that will engage people, get people interested in what you have to say, and then provide them with break points where they can kind of just take a breather and say, okay, now I'm ready
It's
for
like the Jim Rome show.
Exactly. Jim Rome's an excellent example, right? Where there's those split ups when he goes in between topics, 100%, right? And so it was listening to that stuff that wanted me to or pushed me to up my game when it came to how the quality of the show that we brought together, right? So it was Blue who does the editing for it. She's huge on it. She's really, really good. We would be lost without her. In fact, I've done the editing a few times for shows where she couldn't do it, and it sucks, and I hate doing it. But the amount of work that she puts into it, it clearly shows. And it's an amalgamation of all of our ideas coming together, free flow, and saying, do you think this worked? Do you think this wouldn't work? And really Blue has stepped up her game 100% for that. But it was that desire to have that kind of show where we all agreed that this was something that we wanted. And, there's podcasts out there that are audio only where there is no editing whatsoever. And that works for some people. The way we wanted to do it, that's it, is that, if that's the case, and you can do it well, then it's perfect. It can run that way and it feels seamless. It feels like two people just having a good time talking together. But because we also wanted to cover the news, so it was topics that were kind of planned out beforehand, we knew we needed to have something that would differentiate ourselves a little bit. And that was that
kind of cut you off when you feel like you're dragging and stuff like that. Like really getting the meat and potato pieces of it instead of feeling like it's a bunch of kind of shovelware in between. Occasionally, yeah, and stuff like that.
And that happens to everybody, right? So for example, last episode, we recorded for 2 hours, and we usually aim for about the official show being between an hour and 20 minutes. That's our goal. So a lot got cut out. And you know what? The one thing I think I've learned too is to be okay if I felt like I made a good point, but it didn't make the podcast. Whatever. I'm okay with it. There are a million other things that went well with that episode. That one point is not going to upset me. I just need to make sure that I'm continuously bringing good points or good information or content. That's my job.
It almost makes you want to punch up a little bit harder than next time, because it's like, man, like that felt good, but it didn't make the cut. I'm gonna have to kill him again next week.
I got to up my game. Exactly.
Absolutely.
So it's a good thing. It's like we're challenging each other.
And anybody else you wanted to shout out there?
It's interestingly enough, both Donnie and Blue, I think, are probably the big inspirations for me as well. They constantly make me want to do better. But also like watching Donnie's content when he was first coming up and just his general take on things, and then reading Blue's articles, all those things. It was an inspiration knowing that I wanted to work with these people because they both really brought their own unique take, their own unique personality. So they inspire me, is what I'll say.
Well, shout out to them. Shout out to moms. Shout out to grandparents. That's awesome. Sounds like you were feeling and doing well, brother. But now I need to know what genre of gaming you refuse or don't really like playing.
You know what? This one's tough too, because I'm always somebody who's curious enough to try something out at least once. I'm never that person that's gonna be like, nah, ain't gonna happen. The one thing I typically don't find myself trying is probably mobile games. Is where the cutoff is for me. I know it's something that's hugely popular, especially with younger generation, but to me, it just doesn't feel right. And it's mostly pay to win style games as well. I don't like having to get something for free, and then if I want to get further into the game, having to pay $4.99 here, $2.99 there. In order
or instead of paying, you have to spend 6 days doing this now.
Exactly.
To catch up to somebody else that paid and spent 3 minutes doing it.
Right. Exactly. So mobile gaming's a big one. And the one, it's not even a genre, it's just a series of games. I know you're a fan of Smash Bros. I've tried it and I just can't get into it. And I think a lot of it has to do with I'm really awful at it. and everybody that I know that would want to help or would want to play with me is really good at it. So I just end up getting beat down, beat down, beat down. And I want to like that game. I want to get into it. I think it would be something that I could really do well in. I just haven't found the right people to like hold my hand for it. And
Fair
I've got
enough.
it on several consoles. I've tried it several times, and it's always the same story. But watching other people play it, super fun, very entertaining. I can't find myself getting as into it as I think I want to.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All
Mhm.
right. What is your favorite studio, and what game best represents that?
Oh man, this is like taking it way back.
Mm,
So this is technically Blizzard, but it was before they were Blizzard, and it was uh, Silicon and Synapse. They
okay.
made Lost Vikings, Rock and Roll Racing, and Battle Chess, and I think they also made no, that was Rare. Um, those three games, loved those growing up. I've got a huge affinity for Rock and Roll Racing. Loved Lost Vikings, and it's just the humor that came out of them when they were young. They were like, plucky, wide-eyed kids that were making games out of their mom's garage, right? And some of the stuff that they were able to produce for a console like the Super Nintendo is astounding. And then eventually becoming Blizzard, which interestingly enough, had the name they picked was Silicon Synapse was not something that anybody understood, right? So the name wasn't catchy. Interplay was like, you got to change this name. It sucks. And so they flipped through a bunch of like a book or a dictionary and went through a bunch of names, and they found Blizzard as being the first one that wasn't copyrighted already.
Mm,
So they went with Blizzard. Fun story. Now, granted, Activision
interesting.
Blizzard not as we'll say well renowned, but Blizzard made a lot of really great games when I was, in my teens in the late '90s, and so that Silicon and Synapse came into Blizzard. They understood me, right? Especially when you're talking about like Warcraft, Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3, StarCraft. All of those were fantastic games that I spent so many hours playing. So if you don't take modern versions of that studio and you just take it from like the year 2000 back, I love Silicon Synapse slash Blizzard.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I remember RPM. That was a good one to me
Mhm,
way back in the day. Really liked that joint. Um, Man, but I didn't play too many Blizzard games,
mhm.
especially once they hit their stride with like World of Warcraft and stuff like that. I was just like, no, that's not for me. That's not the type. But here I am now. I mean, because there were similar type games that I really enjoyed, like Gauntlet.
Yep. Yep.
Gauntlet was fantastic. And here
Mhm.
I am now today after saying, man, F those games so long ago, right?
Right.
I got Diablo 4 pre ordered and loaded.
Love
Absolutely
it.
hated those games when I was young, but now I'm just like, oh, I got friends. I can I can play this game and get high levels. Like, let's go. Yeah,
Love it.
so I'm very excited to get into that game. That's going to be really fun. Shout out to Blizzard for keeping the lights on over there
There
and
it
doing
is.
what they got to do. But um, moving on to one of the last questions. We got about I'd say 3 questions left. 2 of the questions are pretty much like pushed into one kind of subject.
Mhm.
But I'm going to go ahead and ask you, what is the most better yet, I'm choosing a better question. If you were to revive 2 IPs that are dead and give them the AAA, the AAA experience that you've always wanted. PS5, Series X, PC, whatever. hard-working, crazy new hardware, right? Prettiest it could possibly be. What are those two games?
So, that one's a tough one.
I know, it's my favorite.
So the first thing that comes to mind is I would love another Mega Man game. I loved Mega Man. Loved it. I mean, they came out with, 9, 10, and 11 a while back, was fantastic.
Would you like an old style or like something new that's 3D with a Mega Man and he's all like Ratchet and clanked out, like,
and you know what?
ripped apart or something?
Yeah, that's more what I was looking for too, because they made Mega Man Legends, which was the 3D version of Mega Man, but it didn't work. They didn't really know how to do it at that point because it's the N64, it's the PlayStation. Nowadays, if you could really make a fantastic Mega Man game out of that, and just make it something. I mean, if you're really looking at it from just like a point of view, like a Halo style game, but you get to pick up the weapons of the bosses that you kill, right? You get to upgrade yourself like Mega Man X. I think that would be super fun. I would love that. So yeah, definitely a modern version of Mega Man.
So you're saying 3D Mega Man with a skill tree?
Yep, skill tree, and bring back the great music. Make it rock. I mean, he was Rock Man in Japan for a reason. So make it a rockin' soundtrack. Bring in some like heavy metal or something just to get your blood flowing as you're going through it, heart racing, and make it really, really tough. Really, really tough.
I didn't. Yeah, I mean, because those games are tough. But I mean, that's interesting. I've never even thought of Mega Man. I've never had any guests bring that up. So really nice one. What's number 2?
This is where I'm going to struggle because
the second one's always a bitch.
Yes, it is.
Because now you're excluding a ton of others possibly.
Exactly. So let me think here. Because okay, I'm just gonna peek back here, right? All right, you know what? Haven't had in a while is, and again, I feel like I'm lame for my two choices, but I'm into retro, so this is where we're going with this. But I haven't had a good Punch Out game in a while, and I love Mike Tyson's Punch Out
fun again.
Yes, and the Wii version was fantastic. It was really great. It wasn't. I wouldn't say it was as good as Super Punch Out or Mike Tyson's Punch Out, but at least it was good. Bring that back. Have some fun with it. They've made a lot of modern versions of boxing games, but it just doesn't have the charm of Punch Out. Punch Out is purposely goofy for a reason, and that's the fun part about it, right? I mean, you're fighting a guy who you punch him in the gut and his pants fall down and he's got to pull him back up. How fun is that? And that level of just, you don't have to take it too seriously when it comes to a game like that. But obviously you'd find it on the Switch, but yeah, I would love that. I think it'd be fun.
Man, to see something brand new like that with like the goofiness of Punch Out with today's kind of like flair and graphics with like the choreography of like Prize Fighter.
Yes.
Would be
Absolutely.
really cool to where, because you remember in Prize Fighter, you're like talking backstage with like the referee and he's like giving you shit. And then you walk down the tunnel and people are looking at you and stuff like that. And you get into the ring and the fighter you're going versus, getting ready for the fight and eyeballing you and, telling you he's going to whoop your ass and shit like that. Like that experience in Prize Fighter was fantastic until you got to the gameplay.
Right. And then
the gameplay was just like, wow, this is shockingly terrible. like it's fun, especially when you turn on the directions that tells you where they're gonna be striking, or else there's no rumble in the controller. There's nothing that tells you. Like I remember playing that game and I'd get so angry. I was like, dude, I can fight better in real life than this shit. Like, I was like, there's no way I didn't land that blow. I threw like 30 punches right there, and he just comes in and hits me square in the nose.
Yep.
I love Pride Spider, but I love so many more parts of that game than the gameplay. And that's terrible.
It's like it's the same thing with like Shut Up and Jam too. You would go back and forth, and then you would go to shoot and you had no idea how to score a basket. You just watch the ball go up and like boom and bounce off.
That reminds me of Bill Lambier's combat basketball. Oh
yes.
my God. I'm like, what is happening right now over here? Like, you try to shoot a three or anything, you have no idea what's going to happen. This ball could either be a swish, it could hit the top of the backboard, it can just go straight out of bounds. There's no telling. It's just like you just chucking up a prayer every damn time.
One button does everything. Now the funny part is that was a game that my parents bought for us back when we had the original Super Nintendo, and of course, back in the day, you played what you had. You didn't have a choice. There wasn't like you could go out and stream something, or you couldn't go to Xbox Game Pass and get a new game. So we had to learn how to play that game, and my brother got really, really good. He got to the point where he had all 5 of his characters were Bill Lambier. So it's like stats to the max, like 99 for everything. And he put probably 40, 50 hours into that game to get to that point. So I've got a little bit of nostalgia for that game, and I'm a little bit of an apologist for it. I recognize that it's terrible for all intents and purposes, and the learning curve is ridiculous. But once you get it, like once you play it for 4 or 5 hours, and you're starting to
you can start hitting them shots then.
Yeah,
I mean, you start to understand the lanes
exactly,
and like how to like get back on defense to strike again quickly, and how to switch to the right person, because it'll auto switch you if you let it.
Hate that.
But like if you take control of it fast enough, you can be ahead of the auto switch. So you then you can go on ahead and attack that offensive player, steal the ball. And if you do it, I mean, there's a way pretty much you can break that game. Like if you just, I mean, as soon as they inbound the ball, just steal it from them and shoot. And you're just going to continue to break the game right there. And you can get up crazy points and whatnot. But it takes a little bit of playing and a little bit of screaming at your TV before you realize what the fuck's going on.
I just remember like the first time we played it was like, what the fuck is this? Like,
just some red and blue dudes running.
Right. Like, and they look like, it's a top down perspective. So it's super awkward looking, right? It reminds me of like boxing for the Atari, right? Where it looked like 2 crabs were kind of fighting each other. Same deal. Everybody's got mohawks for some reason. And, you step on something and it's either a bomb or it goes off and destroys somebody else. Like
it's like a shell.
Yep. It's like a red shell in Mario Kart, and it's such a strange game, and especially they made a game for Bill Lambier, right? He wasn't Michael Jordan, he wasn't Larry Bird.
He was an asshole on the Pistons. That's all he was. he was good at his position, but he wasn't even the best at that. Like,
right.
He was just an asshole that was on a team called the freaking the Bad Boys. Mm-hmm. And somehow they marketed him tough enough to have his own game. And I'm just like, dude, there is no way. Like there's people that have their own games like Chris Berman's or or whatever Berman's like Sunday Night Football, Deion Sanders football. They had Jordan versus Bird. Then there's fucking Bill Lambier. Like, what are you doing here, bud? How'd you get in the building?
Just thinking, like, if they picked like a random lineman from any NFL team and made it his game, Just like, okay, all right.
Yeah, so, yeah. What the hell? Like even Warren Sapp would make more sense than Bill Lambier
Exactly.
did. like, like you guys chose like a guy that might be coming off the bench for another team, and and decided to make it your your uh your game, which is insane. Yeah, man, absolutely, dude. I got that same game right over there.
Yep.
Fantastic, man. I love it. But brother, this is the last question, and then we got to wrap it up and get up out of here. We're already about 20 minutes past what I anticipated, but I see. I know this kind of stuff happens when I'm having a decent conversation. It just goes over time and whatnot. And this is not edited or anything. It's just the real thing. So, I want to know now, and this is more on the serious side.
Mhm.
What frustrates you in gaming? And it can be anything. Like it could be development time, or like IPs and being remade to death. It can be the community around gaming. Really, any piece of gaming that bothers you, I want to hear about it real quick.
And I think you've kind of nailed it a little bit there with development time and community. That's the my biggest pet peeve. Yes, they development time takes a while, right? There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
New
So
game is like 6 years for AAA.
right, for the most part, and sometimes those games get delayed and get pushed back. And the community seems to really give developers a hard time for that. So it becomes this big uproar. Why? How dare you? More or less. And I think Cyberpunk 2077 was a pretty good analogy for what happens when you push out a game before it's ready and the consequences that you have to face. And the thing is, that has created a unique situation in gaming where because people are clamoring so much for hitting that release date that some company has put out there, they create this situation where there's crunch. People are working tireless hours trying to make sure that this game is put out in time. It comes across as being buggy, and as a result of that, it needs to be patched. And what's happening now, I think, is that a lot of companies are willing to put out a game that's incomplete because the timetable that's required for that from dictated by the fans with the expectation that, oh, we'll just be able to fix it later. But that harms gamers at the end of the day. What that does is if I'm an early adopter, so I'm a big fan of an IP. Let's say Final Fantasy 16 is coming out soon and it's not complete. I buy it day one because I'm excited about it. And all of a sudden now I have a really poor experience because it's buggy, things are crashing, it's an incomplete story, whatever it is. Something's wrong with the game from an experience that I was expecting to be really stellar. And it's this like strange kind of which came first, the chicken or the egg, but it's created this entire situation where the future of games seems like it's going to be something like that, where they release something and then the expectation is that it'll be playable in 6 months to a year. You saw that with No Man's Sky. You saw that with Cyberpunk 2077. You're starting to see that with things like Redfall. That's not a great thing for the industry. And then at the end of the day, I think that's going to deter more people from getting into gaming and kind of crash the hobby. Not officially, of course, but it people got into gaming during the pandemic because they had nothing to do. So it was a great opportunity for them to let off some steam and do things. You've got this marketplace, you've got these people, you've got these adopters. We need to do our best as a community to support gaming companies so that they can release games that are complete and that are ready for prime time. And that was a really long explanation for something that truly frustrates me, honestly.
No, I don't think it was long at all because it really highlights something that's really not good and almost the most backwards business practice that I've ever seen. That is gaming and how things come out nowadays.
Mhm.
I don't know how many businesses or how many things that you know of to where your purchase day one is less rewarding than somebody's purchase 6 months later with
Right.
the same game.
Right.
You're buying now and paying full price. $70 is the new price tag for a lot of these games. To possibly, sure, you get to play it first. Sure. I'm going to give an example. I bought Callisto Protocol day one. It was a great looking game. It ran fairly well on my PS5. I did have some issues, and some of the gameplay itself was weird to me. Like healing took way too long. Changing guns took way too long. As I said, some of the performance or most of the performance was just fine. The game looked fantastic. Tell me why I beat the game. A few months later, it drops in price. They do updates to the game to make the healing faster, the gun switching better, and just the motion more fluid. The game's on sale $20 off. So you're telling me the person that paid $50 is getting a better experience than me that paid $70 for it.
Right. Right.
And the game ain't even broken. They just got a better experience because you guys used me as the QA.
Right. You're the beta tester, right?
You used me as the QA and many others to figure out the issue instead of using the people that you pay to QA to figure it out. In other words, you got paid for me to QA.
Right. Right.
Which is like so backwards. And then, like I said, it's even worse for a broken game. Cyberpunk, a great thing that you just said. By the time that game was fixed, people had already picked that game up for $20.
Right.
Some for $5.
Right.
Or 10 or something like that. And they got a genuine high quality experience. But the day one adopters, they spent
so they took it off of the PlayStation Store. That's how messed up that game was.
right. It's so messed up. It's off of a store. It's bricking systems. It looks terrible, buggy, whatever. Sure, maybe somebody in this chat or somebody that's listening had a Series X or PS5 and said, "Oh, I didn't see any issues," or they played on this PC. "Oh, I didn't see any issues." There is a reason PlayStation took drastic measures. There's a reason CD Projekt Red themselves came out and said this is embarrassing.
Right.
I just
it's following that game. I was following that game for years. I even did a voiceover for somebody who was making lore videos for that game.
Bro, people took days off of work. That game was so hyped. My buddy that I co-run this channel with, he took a week off of work to play that game. He turned it on his 1X, turned it right back off, and had nothing to do all week. And it was like, great. Not only did this cost money, but I'm using time I could be using for something else. And then you're telling me to come back again when you have your next game to be there day one for that as well, as if I didn't just go through the worst thing in gaming. Like it's just weird. But anyways, I got to get to the other half of this question so we can get up out of here. The other half of this question was, what would be a dream come true for you in gaming?
I don't know if there's necessarily something that out there that I'm like clamoring for. Um, and this really, if this was the case, it would kill separate consoles because it would just make everything ubiquitous. But I would love to see crossplay across all the consoles. I would love to be able to do that. I would love to see that the console that you choose doesn't dictate who you can play with. That's the one downfall of that. I recognize though that as soon as you do crossplay, it gives you no reason to buy one console over another. That sucks. But I still want to be able to play games with people that have a different system than me and have that experience. Because nowadays, gaming has transformed for something that you solely do by yourself in your house to something now that you share with as many people as you can. So I know it's unrealistic, but I would love there to be some option for that.
Well, the more we lean into the future, we notice the more that changing is happening. I mean, hell, they just got done announced not that long ago that the new Mortal Kombat game is going to be having crossplay and crossplay progression as well. So you'll be able to, earn while playing somebody when you're on a PS5 versus a Series X or Series S or PC.
Right.
Goodness gracious, do you want to go versus somebody on PC? I don't know. But maybe not in the FPS game.
Yeah, I was just saying, if you're playing Warzone, good luck.
I think maybe Mortal Kombat or like a fighting game might be a little bit nicer to you than an FPS game with the mouses. Those things are ruthless. But anyways, what's up, Silent Cypher? I see you in the chat. We are just getting done with the show, and I would like to thank you, Mr. Retro Game Brews, for coming through today. It was a fantastic conversation. I hope you had as good of a time with this as I had, brother. Thank you so much. There's two things I want you to do. The first thing I want you to do is let everybody know one last time where they can find you, where they can check out your content, where they can follow you, all that good stuff. Go on ahead, brother. Go with that.
Yeah, so for me personally, it's at Retro Game Brews on Twitter. For the Gamers Week podcast, you can find us at Gamers Week PC on Twitter, patreon.com/GamersWeek, or any podcast platform of choice you like just by searching Gamers Week podcast.
Fantastic. Again, thank you so much for being on, brother. Thank you so much, Dragonheart Yobi. He said fantastic show in the chat. Yes, it was a good one. A lot of interesting takes, a lot of interesting stuff, different stuff to talk about on this podcast, being that you're so much more into retro than you're into all of the new stuff. So that was very refreshing to go through. But the one last thing I need you to do, brother, and I have everybody do this at the very end of my show. So if you get stumped a little bit, it's okay. But if you end up making it flow, it's all good, bro. So let me know how you would describe gaming in just 3 words.
The perfect escape.
Chef's kiss. That was nice, quick. I mean, bro, just spit right there. That was perfect. Thank you, everyone that tuned into today's show. It was fantastic. Make sure, if you haven't already, hit that like button. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. I'd love to have you guys back into the chat. I'd love to have you back into just hanging out and watching, and let me know how everything is in the comment below if you came through after we showed this episode live. But let me also go ahead and throw out there that obviously, since I'm doing Behind Them Sticks today, I will not be doing it on Thursday like this actual episode was supposed to be on Thursday. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know how you want to look at it, but I gotta go pick up my daughter. I gotta go pick up my daughter from her grandma's and whatnot. And yeah, gotta do that tomorrow night. So I'm not gonna be available until a bullsitting this Friday, our panel show that we have. That'll be fantastic. So make sure you guys catch me on Friday. I will be coming in tomorrow to do a little short show, talk a little bit about Xbox and whatnot. So make sure you come through. Stay tuned for that. It should be a fun, funny, and interesting show because a lot of people within the community are talking a little different after that last PlayStation showcase. It wasn't exactly what some people were looking for. So we'll be talking about that for sure. But as I always say, this is your boy Ham Solo from TSWS Gaming. And in case you didn't know what that means, as they said, we said, thank you. TSWS Gaming, thank you so much, everybody, for showing up. And as I always say, keep it gaming or keep it moving. Peace out, y'all.
Have a good one.